I mean, did you ever? Wilson Bus Lines is located in East Templeton, Massachusetts. And believe me, any IBCer that wants to stop in here is going to be welcome. Peter Wilson, Mike Gumby and Scotty and Judy and Marcia are all longtime friends of the family. Hey, let's let Peter tell you a little bit about the car.
Bank has that. We have exhaust temperature we added to it. Oil pressure, transmission temperature, voltmeter, fuel gauge. We have docking lamps with lights in the rear bumpers that we haven't put in yet. Mostly Model 10. When you get over here, it's the stuff for the turntable lock. It has an anti-jackknife device in it. There's this will put power to it, and then it runs an indicator light on the dash. Turn lock right here. Rear axle lock. It's set up. Originally, it had mechanical through a series of bell cranks off the turnstile and a drag link running to the rear axle on the rear car. It steered the rear wheels. It is now set up like a Setra is today with a lazy axle. It free floats and it also locks. So that's why we have a rear axle lock. It locks off the speedometer sensor when it reaches 30 miles an hour. It locks when you select reverse, and you can always manually lock it so it's locked all the time. And it doesn't have this mechanical drag link going down through the center of the luggage compartment now. Section, or you can also dial them in. So each section is separate from each other. It's got dual evaporators, dual heater cores, and obviously 2 blower motors. The compressor and the condenser fan is common, but it's got a kick-ass AC system in it. It works real well. You know, similar to the European buses. In fact, this bus originally was hooked up this way. The heat and air conditioner came out up top. These vents actually fit a 102C3. They fitted the dashboard of our bus, of a MCI bus, the ones that were running. And then we had these plaques made by a driver that works here. Made these plastic plaques, and they just fit a dashboard. They were cheap and they work real well. This is original. This handrail, all this was recovered. Mark Codwell built the interior and recovered the floors, and we sent him the headliner material, and he did a lot of the cosmetics that you're looking at for sure. We added eagle roof hatches. There's a roof hatch in the front and the rear, escape hatches, which it didn't have originally. Some more work to be done in here. It's not quite finished yet, actually. I want to put some modesty panels here, similar to the front when you walk in the entrance door behind the driver. There'll be some modesty panels. Set up now for 60 passengers plus 5 passenger for the rear lounge. We're counting that as 5. It can fit more, but 5 real comfortable. I mean, when we laid out the seats, we made that so if we take out the lounge, we put 4 sets, 8 more individual seats back there, and it would be a 68 passenger with some card tables. Once the novelty wears off, if it does. It was wrinkled, but this is supposed to be glass back here. I don't think. It's getting made again. But originally, even the 40-foot Eagles, as you're aware of, they had all this sunroom here. And they took them all out. I talked to people because of leaks, and the AC system was just too hot. I mean, they had minimal ACs then, and they just couldn't keep them cool. Plus, to maintain the stop the water leaks.
Granted, it may not be 100% accurate, but it's a spectacle. It's a spectacle. I know my dear friend, the late Jackie Wilson, Peter's dad, is really proud of his boys on this one, I want to tell you. This is something to behold. Again, believe me, these are friendly, down New England folk that will welcome you anytime. Oh, yes. Before I get ahead of myself here now with those articulateds and all, in 1958 the first Silver Eagles appeared, which you saw a couple of and the destination sign sent to the top of the roof of the bus. The lower lightning bolt, no longer a three-tiered lightning bolt. And as was the rage back in those days, white wall tires. Of course, white wall tires didn't last too terribly long because they'd be rubbing into bus curbs and curbs there in the depots and whatnot. In a picture by a very young John Holbein, you can see one of the Casbora early 01s, although they weren't particularly called 01s here in this time period. The 01s actually belonged to Bus and Car. You can see the solid baggage bay door. See? One piece. That would be modified into a three-piece one eventually. 6714. Now, things weren't all that wonderful at Casbora between Continental and the German manufacturing firm. The cars were coming over, fairly steady stream, and the boys at Dallas were starting to push Setra a little hard. And at the very same time, Setra's fortune was starting to become a little stronger in Europe in the building of European-style cars. You have to remember, this wasn't too terribly long after World War II. We're just talking in 1959 and so on. Other trailway carriers were expressing an interest. Queen City, Smoky, they're all starting to take a good long look at the Eagle. So the boys from Dallas went shopping, looking around, trying to see if they could find somebody else that might make them another bus. They were actually, what they were looking for was somebody who was in trouble and had an established assembly line. See, now you got to remember, these Setra Eagles were on the assembly line, okay, at Casbora. The boys from Dallas did have jigs and dies from the old Aerocoach style framework that they could take to a new manufacturer. Thus, in 1960, after a hunt of gigantic proportions, they found an outfit by the name of La Bourgeois. Now, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that right. It's Brugoise. So my French and Belgian or Flemish or whatever it is not that sharp. But anyhow, their factory was to be built in Saint Michel, Bruges. And it wasn't quite ready, so La Bourgeois, again, I don't know if that's correct or not, La Bourgeois, built the 1960 Eagle 01 as we know it. Now, if you'll notice this early Eagle, look at the wheel wells. See, they're squared at the top. Got a little bit of a fender there, squared at the top. This shows it a little bit better. Again, this is a La Bourgeois Eagle, the interim Eagle before the Saint Michel Bruges plant of Bus and Car was built. Again, the wheel well. Now, if you have a bunch of trailway slides in your collection, this is the rarest of the rare Eagle 01s. The square wheel weld version right here. Yeah, this is really definitely a very, very rare Eagle. Now, this is the factory at Saint Michel Bruges, or That's, I think, again, that's the way I'm pronouncing it. If you want to, if you want to convince the Smithsonian to make a bus tape, good, they'll have it accurate. In the meantime, you've got to live with me. Here's where it gets kind of interesting. The fact that I know people who were there on the facility, they lived in Belgium, they worked there, they were the liaison between Dallas and Belgium. And there were two distinct bus companies in here. Bus manufacturers, not bus companies. One line was owned by Continental. The other line was either directly associated with La Bourgeois, or whatever, however you pronounce it, or they were spin-off people from La Bourgeois. Now again, bus and car. Well, the reason why is there were actually transit coaches assembled at this facility. And a matter of fact, one was even tried and tested in Seattle, Washington. Here's one of the, this is one of the later transit buses produced by Bus and Car. And it very proudly, as you can see on the nose, carried the same eagle emblem that the Continental cars did. I know practically nothing about these whatsoever. I know absolutely nothing, as a matter of fact, other than the fact that there were assembled transit buses at this plant. The car was introduced along about 1962, and that was the Eagle 01 with the high roof. This resulted, of course, in increased luggage space on the interior of the coach, the overhead luggage racks. People were complaining that the original 01 Eagles, the rack was not really that big to be able to put stuff up in it. So these can be considered relatively rare little girls as well. Now the high-roofed Eagles still had the fender flaps on them, the painted fender flaps, although some of them were, of course, unquestionably natural aluminum as well. Thanks to John Holbein for some of these high-roofed old girls. Again, a lot of IBCers were not even aware that this car existed, because there weren't thundering herds of them, needless to say. Here is 6818, one of the golden high roofs. This is the old Hoboken garage. Used to exist years ago. 4834, a high roof Golden Eagle. Matter of fact, you can see her stewardess with her little red suit on right inside the doorway there. Again, these cars had the low single lightning bolt on them. One of Deluxe Trailway's high levels was Deluxe 201. In those days, that was when they used the lettering prefix, not the two-number prefix that they used at the end. Again, a 5-star service Golden Eagle. Safeway Trailways. Safeway's 517. However, the biggest production run at Bus and Car would be the fully round wheel weld Eagle 01 that you see here with the high lightning bolt, at least at the beginning. These cars were coast to coast. Here's Mount Hood Stages out in the state of Washington, leaving the old Seattle garage. Again, she's the low lightning bolt. Again, the attempt at running white wall tires, that didn't work out very well, because when they pulled into the bus ports, they'd rub alongside the loading docks and really do a job on them. The rear end of the coach would be reworked a little bit, and those bifold baggage bay doors would come on board. I remember the first one I ever saw in Boston. I didn't know what it was. I mean, that thing really took me off guard. I said, holy cow, would you look at that. First one I saw was the high lightning bolt. I just thought that thing was an awful pretty machine. It became the standard of the Trailways operating companies. Here's Adirondack Trailways, West Point, New York. Virginia Stage Lines, division of Safeway. From my neck of the world, Carolina Scenic. By now, Morris people were buying up everything. They bought up Queen City, Carolina Scenic, Smoky. They were buying coast to coast. Now, the early '01 Eagles had horrendous, and I mean horrendous, corrosion and cracking problems up by that top windshield, and the windshield rotting out. They knew that maybe that old Aero Coach design wasn't so great, that Aero Coach framework. They were getting a little bit in trouble here, and they knew it. This is one in their latter years, but you can see it, how the cancer is very, very rapidly advanced. And also internally, where you couldn't see, things were going on. But still in all, basically, she was doing pretty good for Trailways. And she was attracting the attention of other industry operators that weren't in the Trailways families. The folks at Dallas, the folks in Dallas knew that the factory at Saint-Michel-les-Bruges was not going to survive on Trailway bus manufacturing alone. And they had nothing to do with the other half of the factory that was making buses for the European market. Thus, a very conscious effort was made to try and woo outside sales. Of course, with the addition of the American diesel engine and the GM powertrain, naturally, the car did have some appeal stateside. So they did finally secure their very first sale. And that was to Bob Wade up in Schenectady, New York. Wade's Tours and Charter Service. Bob Wade, he actually liked the car. He had remained loyal too for darn near right up to the end of the production line. Well, at least to the end of the '05s. The Michaud Company in Salem would come on board, Salem, Massachusetts, and 190 was their first Eagle. Again, the Michaud people thought very highly of the car. They liked the passenger response, especially to it, was very high. The ride was elegant. You weren't bobbing and weaving on turns and whatnot. Thus, little 190 here would lead to many, many more purchases by the Michauds. Other folks, too, decided, well, I guess maybe we ought to take a good long look at this bus. The Michauds even transferred some of them to their Boscom division, which they operated at one time. It's now part of a transit authority today. Of course, when they transferred the Eagle 01s to Boscombe, they were pretty long in the tooth. Thus, the Eagle 01 established itself and the Eagle reputation as a firm and solid bus builder. And as we said, she did enjoy limited sales. However, because of her corrosion problems, and she was prone to having some electrical problems, some operators like Hudson Transit and Biber and Capital Trailways would shy away from them. And they wouldn't touch them anymore. And this set back the Eagle reputation pretty far for quite a while. Badger coach out in Milwaukee gave him a shot. Decided no, the car wasn't for them. Crown coach lines in Joplin, Missouri. They gave him a try and they decided no, it wasn't for them either. However, she did find a home at SKG Lines in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Joel Akers liked the Eagle a great deal. SKG Lines is that very unique operation that's 50% owned by Greyhound and was 50% owned by Trailways. Today part of the Jefferson system. You'll be seeing some more SKG cars here. Again, it's very, very unique operation. But they were right on board, right almost at the start with the 01s. They never operated the Setras, but they did operate the bus and cars. You'd see them around as they were released from Trailways for, a lot of the late 70s, but 01s are very rare beasts today. Because what did them in, of course, was the fact that their frames were rotting out on the interior of the coach. This is Liberty Baptist College. Now this 01 was in fairly good shape. Right? You can see her stressing out a little bit around the upper windshield though, and she's on her way. It was 1969, and the new look Eagle 05 emerged. The car, there were a few cars produced with a round nose, and they were called 05s. They had the square bumpers and all that on them, but this is the true 05 right here. Now, bus and car was bopping along pretty good over there. They were producing some coaches for themselves, like this Eagle 04 here. The Eagle 04, a few of them were imported to the United States through the back door up in Canada by an outfit that tried peddling them here. There's one in the latter part of her years in California. However, Emmy Moore had himself a little problem going on. What happened was that, I guess technically a good analogy is that he filled up his MasterCard. Here's an early shot. This early shot here in bus and car shows one line, as you can see, producing the Eagle 04 and the other line producing the new 05. Now, that line that was producing the Eagle 04 was not owned by Continental. Their interest was in the 5 line. However, as we said, and thus Continental would lose control of its interest in bus and car. It would be 10 years before they would begin manufacturing buses again. In the meantime, the original Moore Continental got in so much trouble that they ended up selling out to the Holiday Inn Corporation. But the 05 was well entrenched all around the system. Wherever you went, Washington, Boston, they were well entrenched cars now. The old Washington, D.C. terminal down on New York Avenue, right across from the Greyhound terminal on New York Ave. The cars would be produced with the high lightning bolt. They were even producing Golden Eagles until '74, I believe. They took out the high lightning bolt. Of course, the last living example of the Continental Golden Eagle 05 is panhandles. And believe you me, this is a living doll as well. Panhandle in Amarillo, Texas may be hosting Bus Bash very shortly. And if you come just to see this, it would be worth it. This is the last perfect stock, with the exception of one television that's stuck behind the driver for the people to see. This is a stock Belgian Golden Eagle, entirely as they were at the time they were running. And you want to do something, you want to try and get this car away from Rich Allison out there at Panhandle. This is his little baby. He knows what a jewel this is. Still gold anodized. Oh, something to behold.